Hi, this is Marc Elias of Democracy Docket. I had a great conversation with Nicolle Wallace and Tim Miller of The Bulwark. By the way, Tim is one of my favorite podcasters. If you haven't checked out his podcast, you should. And we were talking about the continued attacks we are seeing from the right wing, from Donald Trump's federal government, trying to intimidate people to stay quiet. And, President Obama gave a talk in which he talked about the importance of business leaders and law firms and others standing up. And we have seen a crackdown against Democratic elected officials being thrown in handcuffs and the like. And all of this is an effort to try to create a sense of fear and a sense of futility in standing up to Donald Trump. So we talked about all of that. I want you to take a look at these clips, and then I'll be right back and offer a little more context. I think President Obama is entirely correct. And he, in that same Q&A, he was asked about the private sector and law firms. And he, again, reiterated something you and I have talked about, something I know Tim has covered on his podcast, the role of the legal establishment in standing up. I mean, Donald Trump targeted law firms for a reason, because he wants to neutralize them in being able to fight back. And we saw some of the law firms stand up, some lawyers stand up, but we saw some of them back down. And Barack Obama's words were chilling in this regard. He said, presumably you went into law because you believe in the law. If you're getting pressure from government, say, ignore, fudge, or compromise that commitment, you have to push back. And that is what we need everyone to do, whether they are lawyers, whether they are business leaders, whether they are media executives. We need everyone to push back. And unfortunately, we're seeing far too little of that. And it is easy to focus on the Republican Party. Believe me, there is no one who focuses on the shortcomings of the Republican Party more than I do, but they're never going to push back. So the question we all need to ask ourselves is not what will they do, because the answer is nothing. The question is, what will we do?
Yeah, look, I like this part of what he said, too. I agree with everything you said, Mark. But Tim, he also said this, quote, you could be as progressive and socially conscious as you wanted, and you didn't have to pay a price before, he said. You could still make a lot of money. You could still hang out in Aspen and Milan and travel and have a house in the Hamptons and still think of yourself as a progressive. We now have a situation in which all of us are going to be tested in some way, and we're going to have to decide what our commitments will be. Now things are a little different. You might lose some of your donors if you're a university. And if you're a law firm, your billings might drop a little bit, which means you can't remodel that kitchen in your house in the Hamptons this summer. I mean, it's Obama cool, but it is dripping with disdain for people choosing comfort and their corporate clients over standing up for democracy. And I wonder what you thought of that, Tim.
Yeah, a couple of different thoughts. One, I share his disdain. That sometimes it's hard to keep down, for people that are not standing up in this moment, because we're kind of still at the easy part of standing up, if we could just be honest. Like we certainly have creeping authoritarianism, but if you're on the Harvard board or you're one of these law firms, and we've seen some folks do the right thing in law firms, and we should acknowledge that. But for the ones that haven't, folding right now is not a great sign when things get hotter in the kitchen. The other thing that I would say about what he said, it reminded me, I was talking to Ben Rhodes, his former national security advisor, this morning for the podcast, and Ben pointed out something just about where we are in this process towards authoritarianism I hadn't thought about, which is that, he's like, we always say, well, we might get to Hungary. And in a lot of ways, Orban has grabbed, power in a more authoritarian manner than Trump has. But there are some things that Trump is doing right now that isn't really happening in Hungary. There aren't military on the streets of cities. Opposition leaders aren't getting manhandled like Brad Lander and Alex Padilla. So in some ways, we're past that. I think that's good perspective. My last thing about Obama, you mentioned the Obama cool. Far be it for me to give him advice, but I'd like to hear President Obama making those points with Joe Rogan and Theo Von and and bro pods, not with academics on panels. I just think that he has a higher and better purpose in this moment. So that's just my friendly request.
Yeah, or with you or me or former presidents are very reluctant to weigh in or to squander their platform, but I think all of his warnings from ahead of the election have absolutely come to pass in alarmingly quick order. And I wonder, Marc Elias, what you think the opportunity is to sort of rally around these autocracy warnings with his very clear eyes on these markers where we've slid in Tim and Ben Rhodes telling beyond Hungary.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just to keep total track here. I mean, Donald Trump came to office and said he was going to go have vengeance against his enemies. And we have seen that in words and we have seen that in deeds. I mean, it is not just the most recent people who have ended up in handcuffs. We saw a judge in Wisconsin who was arrested and then indicted, a progressive judge in Wisconsin. We saw a Democratic staffer in their congressional office in Manhattan handcuffed by ICE and by federal agents. We saw a labor leader in California who was handcuffed. We've seen a Democratic congresswoman in New Jersey who's been arrested and now indicted. We saw the mayor of Newark who was arrested. We obviously saw the situation with the U.S. senator in California, the comptroller in New York, both Democrats. But let's not forget, Donald Trump also egged on the head of his head of ICE to arrest the governor of California, which thankfully they didn't, Gavin Newsom. So we are seeing this across the board, and it is high time that everyone speaks up. I am thrilled that former President Obama is speaking up. I admire the fact that Tim, a former Republican Party spokesperson, is speaking up. But we need everyone to speak up. And there is no excuse or permission structure not to. If you are a corporate leader, you need to speak up. If you are a law firm leader, you need to speak up. If you're a university president who is not Harvard, you need to speak up. We just needed more voices in more places.
Tim, the president getting at this liberal elite piece is so interesting because the Republican smear against the Obamas is that they just run in all these elite circles, and most former presidents are technically elites, right? They've served their country and they're in an elite group of former presidents, but he is uniquely situated to call out people who haven't necessarily served their country but are super comfortable. He talks about going to Aspen and Milan. I don't know what happens in Milan. I'll have to Google that. But this idea that there are still people on the sidelines is interesting coming from him.
It is, and I appreciate that. I appreciate what Mark just said. And I guess that kind of goes to what I was saying at the end there about what I wish he was doing, because the President Obama, I think, has a unique ability to influence certain demographics, right? It's like Fox News viewers aren't going to listen to President Obama, so it probably doesn't make a lot of sense for him to use his time doing that or to pop off in the daily news cycle, as you said. This is one area where he can name and shame the kind of maybe not even liberal, but like the centrist elite class, right? And try to pressure them to do the right thing. I think that's very useful, and I'm happy that he's doing it. And because we have seen folding in various places, and maybe he can help stiffen the spine of folks who admire him or who he might run in those circles. And then again, just back to kind of this bro talk, I do think there's an opportunity there for Democrats, and that Democrats need to really work on it, and probably as good as a $20 million plan or whatever it is from some consultants would just be Barack Obama just going out there and leveling with people. And so anyway, I think those are both two audiences that's very useful for him talking to, and I do think it's noteworthy who he's trying to speak to.
Well, I guess I would put Senator Alyssa Slotkin in the mix too. I mean, she's calling them out, telling Pete Hegseth he doesn't have the balls to do what his predecessor did before him. I think that's some straight talk that is welcome. I don't know if they melt in the manosphere when they get delivered inconvenient truths like that, but it was certainly refreshing to hear her speak so bluntly. And it's an apples to apples comparison, Mark. It's Mark Esper, Trump's term 1 SecDef, and Pete Hegseth, his term 2 SecDef.
Yeah, and by the way, it wasn't just his book. I mean, you showed video of him saying it, and so the idea that Hegseth is like, well, don't rely on what you read in the books. I mean, you heard it from the guy's mouth. And
Right.
he is, again, an example of a Republican who has shown remarkable courage. You know, I've said this before, and I'll say it again. You know, people like Tim, people like Esper, they deserve all the credit in the world. So that was me talking to Nicolle, along with, as I mentioned, a couple of shout outs to Tim Miller, who I really do enjoy his podcast, and I do admire his courage. But look, right now, there is a shortage of courage. I mean, right now, we are watching as Donald Trump is threatening over and over again to send federal troops into Democratic cities for the purpose of breaking their political power. This is something actually I wrote about for Democracy Docket. If you didn't read it, it must be because you are not a subscriber or not a premium subscriber. The links to become a free or premium subscriber are above or in the description below. But it's important to understand that part of what he is trying to do with these immigration enforcement efforts in blue cities are, in his words, to break the quote core of Democratic power center. Okay, he wants to undo the political power of his political opponents, and he wants to do that in advance of the 2026 election. And that is something we are going to see more of. And I think it is going to get darker and darker. And as Nicolle and I discussed, we're not going to see anyone in the Trump administration or any Republican anywhere stand up to them. So it's in your and my hands. So here's what I need you to do. Number one, make sure you are informed. And the best way to do that is subscribe to Democracy Docket and also to this YouTube channel. So hit the subscribe button to this YouTube channel right now. I'll wait a second to let you do it. Okay, good. Now, the other thing you can do, though, is you can use your own voice. You know, it's great that President Obama is speaking out, and you heard me say that it's important he does, but also that it's important that we not let anyone off the hook, and that includes you. So if you haven't already, figure out how you can post on social media or raise it in your book club, your bridge club, with around your dinner table or at your local diner. Think about how you can have your voice amplified. Even in whatever community you feel comfortable doing so. Be peaceful, be respectful, but make sure people know where you stand, because courage gets to be courageous, and standing up to Donald Trump and his authoritarianism takes some courage right now. Thanks again for watching this video. There's more of this out there. Just check our YouTube channel. You'll see all kinds of videos, me interviewing people, Paige and I breaking news whenever it comes out. So make sure you're subscribed to this channel, and also, like I said, to the Democracy Docket newsletters. I'll see you next time.